Camilla wasn't ready for what came next. Everyone expected tradition. Everyone expected the usual royal path. But Princess Anne broke that idea in one powerful moment. She turned away from Camilla and placed the Jubilee brooch into Catherine's hands, as if saying, "This is where the future stands. No shouting, no drama, just a quiet royal earthquake." Catherine stood steady, elegant, and respectful, while Camilla stood frozen in shock. The decision echoed across the palace walls and far beyond. Join us as we reveal what happened. The brooch that holds power. There are royal jewels, and then there are royal symbols. The Jubilee brooch has never simply been an accessory worn to decorate a royal coat or brighten a royal smile. It has never merely existed as a sparkling ornament tucked inside a velvet case. Inside the monarchy, objects carry memory. They hold silence, loyalty, and power. They hold stories that are never fully told out loud. And this specific brooch, linked to celebrations of endurance, continuity, and the reign of Queen Elizabeth, has always belonged to that quiet world of meaning that only the royals truly understand. For decades, the brooch has represented something more than beauty. It is a reminder of stability. It is a reminder of what it means to carry the monarchy not just in public appearances, but in spirit. When Queen Elizabeth wore it, it symbolized strength wrapped in calm, the ability to endure storms without ever publicly flinching. It holds the memory of a woman who led from the 1950s until the 2020s, maintaining a monarchy through cultural shifts, personal losses, and relentless scrutiny. Every time it appeared, it whispered continuity. It whispered discipline. It whispered quiet command. Inside royal life, such symbols are never casual. Royal women understand that being chosen to wear a particular jewel is not about fashion or preference. It is about message. It is about who is trusted to embody something sacred. It is about who reflects the values the monarchy wants to be seen living by. And that is why this brooch has always mattered so deeply. It is not loud, it is not exaggerated, yet it carries weight because of the history attached to it and the intentions behind it. Royal watchers know that jewel transfers hold layers beneath the surface. They do not simply pass from hand to hand. They pass from legacy to future. They pass from one type of strength to another. When such a piece leaves one custodian and settles with another, the gesture says more than any royal speech, more than any press release, more than any carefully prepared palace statement. It says, you are trusted with continuity. It says, you carry the quiet spirit of the crown well enough to be tied to this memory. And within the walls of the palace, these decisions are never impulsive. In recent months, the atmosphere surrounding the royal household has felt unsettled, not catastrophic, not chaotic, but undeniably tense. There is a sense of rearranging power, of shifting emotional alliances, of unsaid thoughts lingering in rooms long after conversations end. It is the kind of tension that builds slowly, the kind that does not create dramatic confrontations, but instead establishes distance. Royal women, especially, have carried the weight of expectation, scrutiny, and comparison. And that pressure often reveals where silent loyalties truly rest. Behind the polished appearances, whispers travel, not in reckless gossip, but in quiet observations. Who supports whom? Who silently disagrees? Who holds firm to tradition? Who pushes for adaptation? The Jubilee brooch has always belonged to the camp of tradition, the camp of duty first, the camp that believes the monarchy's survival depends not on charm or applause, but on steadiness and steel. So as internal dynamics subtly shifted following significant royal transitions, illnesses, responsibilities, and public narratives, the question of who represents that spirit now began to quietly hover in the air. It is here that the brooch transforms from jewel to judgment. It is here that its symbolism becomes personal. Royal women care deeply about these gestures because they reflect how they are seen inside the family, not just outside it. Being given something so historically anchored means being recognized as a guardian of legacy. It means being seen as reliable when things become fragile. It means standing closer to the emotional heart of the monarchy. That is why handing it over is never casual. It is never last minute. It is never aesthetic. The brooch belongs in the territory of unspoken decisions that say everything without declaring anything. So when news began to circulate that Princess Anne had personally transferred the Jubilee brooch into Catherine's possession instead of allowing it to follow a predictable path toward Camilla, the emotional shock was immediate. Within moments, the piece was no longer merely a jewel relocation. It was a message. This is not a world where feelings are loudly expressed. This is not a family that thrives on confrontation. Instead, meaning is layered into gestures, glances, silences, and heirlooms. That is why this single object now sits heavy with new significance. It represents judgment. It represents preference. It represents faith. And for royal watchers, historians, palace insiders, and even silent observers around the world, it signals that something profound has shifted within the core of the royal female hierarchy. The Jubilee brooch now sits as a dividing line between what the monarchy was under Queen Elizabeth and what it is struggling to become now. It holds her shadow. It carries her expectation of discipline. It reflects her belief that strength must always be wrapped in restraint, and whoever wears it next inherits the obligation not just to honor its beauty, but to honor the silent contract it represents. The contract of stability, the contract of steadiness, the contract of preserving dignity when everything around feels uncertain. As the palace moves through complicated seasons, internal relationships tested by duty, perception, health challenges, shifting roles, and ongoing public scrutiny, this brooch becomes the quiet storyteller of where true emotional authority currently rests. It becomes the symbol of who the older generation believes can carry the essence of the monarchy without cracking, and it becomes the emblem of who now stands as the chosen representation of continuity in a world that feels increasingly fragile. This single gesture, made without speeches, press statements, or announcements, reminds everyone watching that inside the monarchy, power is often transferred not through words, but through inheritance of meaning. And in the quiet space between royal women, this brooch now speaks louder than any public declaration ever could. Anne's silent decision. Princess Anne has always been different. She has always stood slightly apart from the whirlwind of speculation, emotion, and theatrics that often surround the royal family. From her earliest years, she developed a reputation for discipline, resilience, and an almost unshakable sense of duty. Where others seemed to carry their roles with occasional discomfort or visible weight, Anne carried hers like armor. Not flashy, not sentimental, firm, determined, loyal to the core. Her loyalty, above all, always tied most deeply to Queen Elizabeth. Their relationship was built on respect, consistency, and an unspoken understanding of responsibility. Anne was never one for public softness, but her steadfastness was her way of loving. She protected the crown by embodying reliability. She lived her role with no theatrics, no craving for adoration, just commitment. So when Queen Elizabeth passed, a subtle but powerful question began to echo inside Anne's mind. Who now embodies that spirit? Who truly understands what it means to carry the monarchy, not just wear it? Anne is not someone who reacts impulsively. She thinks in decades, not days. She measures character over long stretches of time, not fleeting moments. That is why her recent decision regarding the Jubilee brooch feels so loaded with intention. It did not fall from emotional favoritism. It did not emerge from brief frustrations or reactions to headlines. It grew from years of observation, from watching how people behave when the lights dim and circumstances grow heavy, from witnessing strength not when things are easy, but when they demand quiet courage. In recent royal months, the atmosphere around the palace has shifted. Responsibilities have evolved. Relationships have been tested. Public narratives have swirled. Health struggles and personal challenges have added weight to already complex lives. Anne has watched all of it with the same stoic intensity she always has. She does not speak excessively. She does not participate in melodrama. But silence has never meant indifference with her. Silence has always meant processing. And through that silent processing, a powerful clarity seemed to crystallize. Anne understands something many forget. The monarchy does not survive on charm alone. It does not endure purely through visibility or modern adaptation. It survives through inner stability, through individuals who can carry dignity consistently, who do not crumble under pressure, who continue to represent steadiness when everything else feels unsteady. That has always been Anne's measurement of worth. So when she looked at the women now standing at the front of the royal stage, the decision became emotional but not sentimental. It became personal, but rooted in loyalty to the crown rather than to individuals. She weighed history. She weighed perception. She weighed what her mother would have valued. She weighed tradition against reality. And then she made a move that instantly reshaped palace dynamics without a single word spoken. By transferring the Jubilee brooch to Catherine, Anne did not simply gift jewelry. She aligned herself. She declared where she believed true strength currently rests. She pointed, silently but firmly, to the woman she believes best reflects the quiet endurance Queen Elizabeth embodied, to the woman who has carried relentless attention with grace, who has endured private storms without theatrics, and who has remained a figure of composure even when circumstances became deeply personal and challenging. Anne's decision carries history behind it. She remembers the early days, the long years of learning by watching her mother, the countless moments where dignity was preserved not by speeches, but by restraint. She has never believed the crown should bend to convenience. She has never seen it as a performance. So this brooch transfer becomes her way of safeguarding the spirit she cherishes most. Not through argument, not through confrontation, through action. Of course, such a move does not exist in emotional isolation. Within palace walls, nothing symbolic is ever neutral. There are feelings involved, there are bruised egos, there are unspoken disagreements. Anne knew that. She understood exactly what it would mean to bypass Camilla. She knew the message it would send, the discomfort it would create, the new layer of tension it would add into an already delicate environment. And yet she proceeded, not recklessly, purposefully. This is Anne's character. She does not waver because of awkwardness. She does not alter choices to avoid unease. She believes in rightness as defined by duty, not convenience. So if this decision deepens emotional divides, she sees that as secondary to preserving what she believes truly matters, the integrity of the monarchy's inner value system. Her silence now becomes louder than any statement she could have issued. She will not explain. She will not justify. She will not engage in public discourse about why she chose the path she did. Because for Anne, explanation dilutes authority. Explanation invites debate. And she did not make a decision to spark discussion. She made it to assert conviction. In the end, Anne's transfer of the Jubilee brooch is not just a gesture of affection toward Catherine. It is a declaration of belief. It is a vote of confidence in character. It is a subtle but powerful message to the rest of the family. This is who I trust with legacy. This is who I align with when it comes to continuity. This is who represents the version of the monarchy I pledged my life to serve. It is a quiet moment, but one that vibrates through the palace. And from this point forward, nothing inside that delicate royal balance will feel quite the same again. Catherine becomes the chosen one. There are moments in royal life that feel ceremonial, predictable, almost programmed into the rhythm of tradition. Then there are moments that feel deeper, heavier, almost spiritual in their quiet meaning. The moment the Jubilee brooch came into Catherine's hands belongs to the second category. It is not loud, it is not theatrical, but it carries a weight so powerful that everyone close to the monarchy understands it instantly. This is not a simple adornment being passed along. This is recognition. This is affirmation. This is a symbolic crowning of character. Catherine's journey has never been easy, even when it appeared polished. From the moment she stepped into royal life, she was handed expectations instead of instruction manuals. She was expected to look composed under pressure. She was expected to maintain poise through scrutiny. She was expected to carry decades of tradition as if she had been born into it. Every smile was examined. Every expression was analyzed. Every choice was narrated for the world. And through all of that, she rarely allowed the strain to show. The monarchy lives under relentless observation, but Catherine has long understood that the real strength of a royal woman is not measured when everything is calm. It is measured when life becomes complicated. And she has faced complicated seasons, public pressures, emotional storms, health challenges that force the world to see her not just as a royal figure, but as a human being navigating deeply personal realities. Yet, even when circumstances surrounded her with uncertainty, she did not center herself in drama. She centered herself in composure. That composure is what many in the family quietly respect, not because it is emotionless, but because it is disciplined. Catherine has learned to move through noise with calm restraint. She has learned to speak through presence, not volume. And that mirrors the kind of royal dignity Queen Elizabeth valued most. The late Queen admired not flair, but endurance, not performance, but steadiness. She admired the ability to remain kind without becoming fragile, soft without becoming weak, visible without becoming consumed. Over the years, Catherine grew from a royal wife into a figure of stability. She became someone the public could rely on, but more importantly, someone the family could rely on. She began to carry herself not as someone temporarily occupying a role, but as someone preparing to anchor a future era. And that shift did not happen suddenly. It happened gradually, through countless moments of grace under pressure. So when Princess Anne placed the Jubilee brooch in her possession, it did not simply feel like jewelry settling into a new home. It felt like trust being handed down. It felt like years of quiet discipline being acknowledged. It felt like a generational nod that said, "You understand what this truly means." This brooch is deeply tied to Queen Elizabeth's reign, and the fact that it now rests with Catherine feels like an unspoken bridge between past and future. There are many titles in royal life: Princess of Wales, Duchess of Cambridge, future Queen Consort. Publicly, those titles carry weight. But titles alone do not define standing within the monarchy's emotional hierarchy. Respect does, character does, endurance does, and this brooch sends a message that transcends formal rank. It subtly declares Catherine as the woman embodying the spirit of continuity, the woman who represents tradition without rigidity, the woman who reflects dignity without hardness. The brooch becomes a silent validation of everything she has carried quietly. It validates the strength with which she handles personal battles without turning them into spectacle. It validates the steadiness she displays when the world grows unkind. It validates the patience she exercises in a family that values restraint over reaction. In many ways, this feels like a moment where the royal establishment looks at her and says, "We see you," not as a symbol for the public, as a guardian of legacy. There is also deep emotional resonance here. This brooch comes from a world shaped by Queen Elizabeth, a woman who represented unwavering commitment through decades of change. To receive an object so closely tied to that reign is like receiving an echo of her expectations and approval. It ties Catherine directly to the late Queen not through ceremony, but through meaning. It says she is trusted to carry the same quiet resilience forward, and Catherine understands that fully. She has always been aware that the monarchy is not sustained through spectacle but through dependability, through making the hard appear graceful, through holding steady when circumstances threaten stability. That is why she wears responsibility not as decoration, but as duty. That is why this brooch feels less like a gift and more like a mantle. In this moment, Catherine steps into a space beyond symbolic beauty. She steps into emotional leadership. She steps into the position of the woman many inside the palace now look toward when they think about the future. The Jubilee brooch does not make her the future anchor of the monarchy. It simply acknowledges what she has slowly become. She is not just the Princess of Wales. She is the quiet center of the storm, the calm that steadies narrative, the reassurance that continuity exists beyond headlines and uncertainty. With this brooch, she does not simply inherit a jewel. She inherits expectation. She inherits faith. She inherits the silent approval of a past era and the trust of the present. Camilla is left out. Inside the royal family, personal emotions are rarely allowed to breathe freely. Everything must be measured. Everything must appear managed. Yet moments arise when restraint cannot completely soften the sting of reality. The decision to bypass Camilla in favor of Catherine is one of those moments. It is not dramatic on the surface. There are no public confrontations, no speeches, no visible scenes of upset, but inside palace walls, It lands with a sharp emotional edge, because this is not just about a brooch. It is about what being overlooked truly means. Camilla occupies a complex space within royal history. Her journey into the role of queen consort has been layered with perception battles, years of public judgment, and a continuous effort to establish acceptance. She has gradually gained visibility, influence, and responsibility. She has worked to shape an image of warmth, resilience, and normalcy in a world that rarely allows either. Yet despite all progress, there remains a subtle divide between tradition rooted in Queen Elizabeth's era and the evolving face of the monarchy today. And that divide is precisely where this decision cuts. For many senior royals still deeply loyal to the late Queen's values, the standards remain unchanged. They do not measure strength by popularity or by adapting to narrative. They measure it by discipline, by legacy, by whether someone instinctively honors the unspoken codes of the crown. Princess Anne is one of those guardians of tradition. Her worldview is grounded in duty rather than perception. And within that framework, Catherine aligns more closely with the values held dear by the older guard. This is why bypassing Camilla is not simply exclusion, it is evaluation. Camilla being overlooked in this symbolic transfer speaks to how she is internally perceived, not publicly framed. Publicly, she is queen consort. She stands beside the king. She plays her role with confidence. But behind the scenes, hierarchy of respect does not always mirror hierarchy of title. That is the painful truth of royal life. Titles can be bestowed. True trust must be earned. And this decision suggests that when it comes to the sacred emotional core of monarchy, Camilla has not fully crossed that invisible threshold. It is not about dislike. It is not about hostility. It is about alignment. In the quiet minds of senior royals like Anne, the future of the monarchy cannot simply be about who currently occupies the top position. It must be about who represents its deepest continuity. And in that silent judgment, Catherine stands where Camilla does not. For Camilla, this moment is not explosive. There will be no visible reaction. She understands the necessity of calm. She understands the demand for composure. But emotional understanding does not erase reality. Being bypassed is a message, not shouted, whispered, but no less piercing. It says that when the family thinks of legacy, her name is not the first that surfaces. It says that when symbols tied to Queen Elizabeth's spirit are passed down, they are not instinctively directed toward her. It says respect exists, but not at the deepest level. And that hurts in a way palace etiquette can never soften. There is also history shadowing this moment. History that cannot be erased by time or adjustment. History that shaped perceptions long before titles ever changed. Some royal bonds were forged over decades of unquestioned stability. Others were born out of disruption, controversy, and complex public response. Senior royals who built their lives around loyalty to the late Queen still carry those old emotions quietly. They may be polite, they may be supportive, but internally they remain anchored to the original moral compass of Queen Elizabeth's reign. So when Princess Anne chose Catherine, it was not simply favoring one woman over another. It was choosing the version of monarchy she believes should survive. And in that equation, Camilla naturally fell outside the center. This emotional sidelining has ripple effects. It creates discomfort. It deepens existing divides. It places an unspoken barrier between Anne and Camilla, one built not out of confrontation, but out of difference in principle. It forces Charles into a silent emotional corner, understanding his sister's loyalty, yet keenly aware of the implication toward his wife. It reminds everyone inside the palace that despite public unity, private alignment is far more complicated. For Camilla, this becomes another weight, not visible, but deeply felt. She remains queen consort. She remains central to the king's reign. But this moment quietly reinforces that in the eyes of guardians of tradition, her place is practical rather than sacred, necessary rather than symbolic. present, but not foundational. And that is where the emotional wound truly lies. Because in royal life, being present is not the same as being chosen. This decision is not about conflict. It is about truth. It is about how different generations of royals see the soul of the monarchy. And in that vision, Camilla has been reminded that she does not embody the core of it. Not in the way Catherine does, not in the way Princess Anne wishes to protect. Being left out here does not remove Camilla from power. It removes her from something far more intimate, the quiet circle of unquestioned legacy. And that silence may prove more telling than any official act ever could. The royal rift deepens. Something inside the monarchy shifted the moment Princess Anne chose Catherine over Camilla. It was not a gesture done under bright lights. It was not wrapped in a dramatic ceremony or exploding headlines. It happened the way the most powerful royal actions always do, quietly, deliberately, and with meaning that only those who understand royal language can truly interpret. Inside royal walls, words are rarely wanted. The most impactful statements come through symbols. A glance, a choice, a moment of recognition. And this one symbol, this single decision to hand over the Jubilee brooch, did something far greater than gift Catherine a priceless piece of royal jewelry. It altered the emotional balance of the palace. Suddenly, the air inside royal corridors feels heavier. People who have served the crown for decades notice it immediately. They are trained to sense emotional temperature shifts long before anything becomes public. Senior aides whisper more cautiously. Private secretaries tread more gently. Those who once assumed the hierarchy was settled begin to realize that lines can still be redrawn, even now. The Jubilee brooch was never just a brooch. It represented loyalty. It represented inheritance of trust. It represented alignment with legacy. And when Princess Anne, the guardian of tradition, the silent protector of Queen Elizabeth's memory, bypasses Camilla to place it in Catherine's hands, it becomes impossible for anyone emotionally invested in the crown to ignore what has been said without words. The first ripple forms between Anne and Camilla. Their relationship has always been layered, built on shared years inside the same institution, but shaped by quietly different beliefs about what the monarchy should be. Anne has always valued discipline, service, and invisibility. She believes respect should be earned through duty, not desired through public acceptance. She represents the generation molded directly by Queen Elizabeth's unwavering sense of responsibility. So when Anne makes a decision this bold, it is no accident. Camilla feels it, even if she does not outwardly react. Even if she continues to smile graciously and walk forward with grace, the emotional bruise sits beneath the surface. Because the truth is, no matter how far she has come, no matter how much she has been accepted into the fabric of the monarchy, moments like this remind her that some doors within the institution never fully open for her. To some, she will always remain separate from the core of Queen Elizabeth's legacy. But this does not only affect Anne and Camilla. It stretches further. It colors how Charles breathes inside his own palace. He is a king who feels more than he ever shows. Those close to him know his heart is deeply emotional. He has always carried the burden of balancing duty with personal feeling. Now, once again, he finds himself standing between the love he carries for his wife and the loyalty his family maintains toward tradition. He understands exactly what Anne meant by her decision. He recognizes the powerful message behind it. And even if he does not disagree with the strength Catherine holds, he cannot help but see the wound it quietly presses into Camilla's world. The king must remain composed, but the man behind the crown cannot ignore the ache. Then there is William. He has learned his entire life to read royal movements without commentary. He understands the tone of silence. He understands decisions that echo. And he understands Princess Anne better than many realize. He knows she does not act lightly. He knows she is never driven by personal bias or emotional impulse. She acts through principle, through loyalty to the monarchy itself. And so William understands that this gesture toward Catherine is not only affection, it is strategic trust. But William is also a husband. He knows what this means for Catherine personally. He knows how much expectation rests silently on her shoulders, how many storms she has faced calmly, and how much dignity she has carried, even when the world watched her closely. Seeing Anne acknowledge that strength is powerful. But William also knows this deepens the emotional rift that already exists beneath polished royal smiles. And it does something else. It changes how the palace begins to behave around Catherine. There is a new stillness when she enters rooms. Not nervousness, respect. That deep, undeniable kind of respect that cannot be enforced by title, but is naturally granted by character. Staff begin to look at her not simply as the Princess of Wales, but as something closer to the steady spirit of the monarchy's future. Meanwhile, whispers continue. Someone mentions how rare it is for Princess Anne to allow sentiment to guide symbolic inheritance. Someone else remarks quietly that the Queen's memory still holds more power inside the palace than any crown resting on a head today. Another softly says that perhaps this marks the real emotional transition into the next era of royal leadership. And through all of this, Catherine simply remains herself, calm, grounded, unassuming, carrying the brooch not as a triumph, but as a responsibility. But for Camilla, the emotional picture is different. She is not naive. She understands symbolism perhaps more than anyone else, because she has lived most of her royal life navigating around it. The past has followed her into every role she has taken. She has had to work twice as hard for acceptance. She has had to face scrutiny from other royals never confronted. And now, standing inside a palace that chooses to honor Catherine with something born from Queen Elizabeth's trust, she cannot pretend it does not sting. There is a quiet distance now, not loud enough to break the family, not visible enough for the public to capture, but deeply real. Anne and Camilla no longer simply coexist. They stand on opposite sides of an invisible emotional divide. Charles tries to soften the space with patience. William watches silently, understanding too well that rifts inside his family rarely heal quickly, and Catherine, without ever intending to, becomes the center of it. Outside the palace, the world will never fully understand what shifts inside these walls. Headlines will talk, commentators will speculate, royal fans will debate passionately, but only those living within this royal structure truly feel the emotional tremors. This was more than rivalry, more than favoritism. It was a redefining of internal loyalty, and as days pass, that loyalty continues to shape behavior. More eyes quietly follow Catherine during events. More voices privately align with the future she represents. More hearts choose to attach themselves to the royal figure they believe will uphold the dignity they remember from the reign of Queen Elizabeth. The royal family remains together. There is unity in public duty, togetherness in obligation, collective presence in ceremony. But beneath the surface lies a new emotional reality, one in which Catherine stands stronger, Anne stands firmer, Charles stands torn, Camilla stands bruised. What this means for the future of the crown. History does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it forms in moments that feel deceptively gentle. Sometimes it sits inside a quiet exchange. Sometimes it hides inside an heirloom, a gesture, a choice. The transfer of the Jubilee brooch to Catherine will one day sit inside the archives of royal history as one of those soft yet defining turning points. Because what Princess Anne did was not just emotional, it was strategic. It was deliberate. It was a declaration about the future. Anne has lived longer inside the monarchy than almost anyone else currently standing within it. She has seen eras shift. She has watched storms rise and settle. She has witnessed crises, scandals, public backlash, and national change. Through decades of transformation, she has remained unwavering in one belief: the crown survives only when anchored to duty, strength, resilience, and moral steadiness. When Anne looked at Catherine, she did not see glamour. She did not see popularity. She did not see the performance. She saw endurance. She saw someone who stands without needing noise, someone who carries pain quietly, someone who honors tradition without making it theatrical, someone whose character reflects the values Queen Elizabeth believed were necessary to keep the monarchy not just existing, but respected. By placing that brooch into Catherine's hands, Anne effectively said, "Here is the trust. Here is the legacy. Protect it." And Catherine understands the depth of that expectation. For her, this is not a moment of triumph. It is a deepening of responsibility. She knows every symbol in the monarchy is watched, remembered, and interpreted. She knows this gesture ties her even more tightly to the spirit of the crown. She knows it places unspoken pressure on her shoulders, not to merely fulfill her role, but to embody something larger than herself. And Catherine does what she has always done. She responds with grace. She does not boast. She does not compete. She does not let the moment swell into pride. She simply honors it, wears it with humility, and lets it speak for itself. That quiet strength is exactly why Anne chose her. That level of grounded dignity is what gives the monarchy hope, because the truth is, the monarchy is in a period of transition. Public trust wavers. The world feels different than it did decades ago. The values people look for in leadership keep evolving. Through that uncertainty, the crown needs someone who feels stable, relatable, and unwavering. Catherine has become that figure, not because she demanded it, but because she earned it through the way she lives her royal life. Meanwhile, Camilla finds herself in a complicated place. She remains queen consort. She remains central to the present reign. She remains part of the machinery of monarchy. But Anne's decision places a thin emotional boundary around her. It does not erase her power, but it changes how history will measure it. Instead of being seen as the bridge to the future, she is seen as part of the present chapter, meaningful but temporary in emotional influence. This realization shapes how she moves forward. It does not break her. Camilla has never been someone who collapses easily. She has faced far worse storms than this, but it adds a layer of quiet acceptance. She understands that some legacies are not meant to intertwine completely. She understands that Anne made her choice not based on hostility, but based on loyalty to an idea of the monarchy that predates Camilla's presence within it. King Charles must now guide the monarchy, knowing this symbolic imbalance exists. He must balance honoring the wife beside him and respecting the sister who speaks in the language of tradition. He must protect unity while understanding division. He must lead while knowing the emotional gravity of what has just reshaped his royal household. William, on the other hand, sees clarity. For him, this moment shows that the senior heart of the monarchy believes in Catherine as its future anchor. That brings comfort, but also a warning. Leadership is not simply bestowed, it must continue to be upheld. Catherine will now be held to a standard even higher than before. She will be measured more intensely. But William knows her, and he believes she will continue to rise without ever pushing herself forward. That is the strength Anne endorsed, not ambition, but character. For the institution itself, this moment serves as a stabilizing marker. It reveals where loyalty now lives. It allows those shaping royal direction to align themselves confidently with the future they believe in. And it reminds everyone working inside the palace that symbolic power matters as much as constitutional authority. In many ways, Anne has given the monarchy something invaluable, a sense of emotional continuity. Queen Elizabeth ruled with quiet strength. She represented duty over drama, service over spectacle. Catherine reflects that same emotional tone. By choosing her, Anne ensures that the crown does not emotionally drift away from its strongest historical identity. But this clarity also carries a chill, because when the future becomes clear, other paths naturally fade. Camilla must now accept that she is not the emotional center of the monarchy's next chapter. Charles must accept that his reign is a bridge. Anne must accept that she has changed relationships she cannot fully repair. William must accept that Catherine's burden is heavier now. And Catherine must accept that she is no longer simply stepping toward destiny. Destiny is already resting on her shoulders. The palace will continue functioning. Royal duties will continue. Public appearances will still show unity, tradition, and shared purpose. But beneath the ceremony, beneath the smiling photographs and formal speeches, lies a new royal truth. The future has chosen its anchor, and it chose Catherine. Years from now, historians will revisit this moment. They will speak of the Jubilee brooch not just as a beautiful royal jewel, but as a symbol of deliberate endorsement. They will write of Anne's protective loyalty to legacy. They will describe how one quiet act shaped direction more powerfully than any public announcement could. Because inside the royal family, small gestures are never small. Every action is layered. Every choice carries history. Every symbol becomes eternal. This decision will live in royal memory. It will color how the monarchy moves forward. It will define how Catherine's story is told. And it will forever stand as proof that Princess Anne did not just hand over a brooch. She handed over trust. She handed over faith.